Hello, everyone. We wait some minutes to welcome everyone today for this webinar, the first webinar after our holiday break. Please, if you want, in the meantime, you can write in the chat your name and from where are you from which place, so we can start to know each other in the chat. In the meantime, we welcome the other participants. I see from Romania, Scotland, Lithuania, welcome. So I will start to share my screen presentation. Sorry. I will show it. Sorry, I will show that. Okay. So you can see my slide, right? Perfect. So welcome to this Eden Up webinar, Digital Skills and Training Practices in Disruptive Industries, a European Perspective. My name is Francesca Menduni, and I will co-moderate this webinar with my colleague, Vlad Miaescu. And today I will shortly introduce the Eden Network of Academic and Professions, which organize this webinar. I will then leave the floor to the four speakers that will have approximately 35 or 40 minutes to present the results of their research. And at the end, we will have a session of question and answer. You can actually start to discuss within the chat. And if you want to make some questions to the presenter, I suggest you to use the question and answer tool of Zoom. The Network of Academic and Professional of the Eden Association has three missions: to support networking between among people that are interested in the activity of the Eden Association, to support professional collaboration among individuals, and to support also knowledge sharing. How we do it? We do it by organizing the Eden Up webinars like this one that you are attending. We also organize Eden chats on Twitter. We organize activities during the Eden conferences and many other kinds of activities. This is the team of our Eden Up steering committee. Usually all the webinars are organized by one or two of us, and this is the reason why today I will be with Vlad, that is also the chair of the Eden Up steering committee. But I don't take too much time for the presentation, and now I will be very glad to present our four speakers. We promised an European perspective, and as you can see, we have presenters from Finland, from ANC, from Italy, and from Switzerland, from the Swiss Federal University for Vocational Education and Training. In this slide, you can see also the order of our presenters. Dr. Essi Rimin will start by introducing the project on which this team is working on. Then Paolo Nardi will present the results, the general results of the different countries' perspective. And he will start also speaking about case studies and insights from the Italian context. Then Katia will speak about the results in the context of Finnish companies. And at the end, we will show a 5 minutes video from Alberto that will describe the results collected in the Swiss context. Now I will give the floor to Essi.
Okay, good evening all. My name is Essi Ryymin and I come from Häme University of Applied Sciences, Finland. And I'm very sorry about the contrasts of light and shadows in my video stream. Hopefully you can hear my voice very well. So I will start our presentation by introducing our project, Still Learning. So Still Learning project is innovative training solutions for learning at work in disruptive industries. And it's a 2-year research and development initiative funded by the European Union Erasmus Plus program. The aim of the project is to investigate competence requirements and learning at work in new generating and transforming industries, and develop innovative methods for continuous competence development. And the project partner organizations are Häme University of Applied Sciences from Finland, B&W from Germany, Cometa Formazione from Italy, and Swiss Federal Institute for Vocational Education and Training from Switzerland. And the disruptive industries engaged in the project are Bioeconomy from Finland, Automotive from Germany, Tourism from Italy and Switzerland, and Building from Switzerland. And Still Learning project is divided in 3 phases, 3 intellectual outputs. The first output is analysis of competence requirements and learning at work in disruptive industries. And the second output is co-created idea bank of innovative learning and training solutions. And the third intellectual output, the third phase, is hyper video-based CMOOC, which means collaborative, massive, open online course, competence developer of a digital age. And our goal is to build the learning ecosystem between researchers, educational institutions, and industries during the project, and pay attention to desired impacts and follow-up. But now I will pass the turn to my colleague, Paolo Nardi.
Thank you very much, Essi. Thank you, Francesca and Vlad, for giving us this opportunity to share some of the emerging results of our project. I'm going to share the screen. Let me know if it doesn't work. Okay. Perfect. So actually, as you may see, it's up to me to present some insights from the stakeholders that we have involved, stakeholders from these disruptive industries. I'm going to give you an overview, but of course, it's a collective work involving all the partners of this project and all the people here involved in this webinar as speakers. Of course, just a quick introduction about the framework. I think that in particular in this context, it's quite clear to everybody that we are living an era of disruption, where this idea of disruption is related not just to innovation, but to innovation happening very, very fast and with an incredible level of acceleration. And this exponential rate of change is something affecting, of course, the technical systems, the production processes, for instance, as well as the social and economical processes, the way people live, the way people behave, their consumptions, or just to give you another example, demography. So, as the World Economic Forum in the last report on the future of jobs highlighted, of course, this disruptive era has a massive impact on the work, on industries, and as a consequence, on education. Not only thinking of the future employees, but also the current employees in terms of reskilling and upskilling. It's, I think, quite interesting from the image we have in this slide, that when education is not coordinated with the development in technology, we experience social pain. Vice versa, we experience prosperity. So it's quite relevant for all of us, and in particular in the context of this webinar, to understand what is going to be the impact of disruption, and in particular how, from an educational point of view, we can work on this. So actually the leading research questions which moved our project and moved our research have been very, very simple but clear. First of all, as we are experiencing a disruption, what are the most relevant key competencies, both generic and transversal and field specific for the industries involved in this disruption? What are the factors which support or inhibit learning for current employees? And what are, if any, the current methods or practices experienced in the companies to reskill, to upskill, or to facilitate learning? And in particular, to what extent digital technologies are involved? In order to develop our research, we focused on a quite clear scientific background. You see here a picture from Hillary's studies, so where actually learning is, of course, based on individual dimensions and community social dimensions, and it's of course related from the individual perspective on the content, which can be interactive, active, constructive, reflective, as well as on incentives. What's the motivation at individual level to pursue learning? At the same time, from a community or social point of view, of course, learning depends on the workplace production, so the workload, the division of labor, as well as the interaction among colleagues, the interaction with supervisors. And of course, we may say that the learning process depends on the interaction between these two levels, individual and social, and is of course related with categories like the occupational self-efficacy, the learning personal approaches, and so on and so forth. So actually, based on this scientific background and on these different dimensions affecting learning, we decided to develop a quantitative and qualitative analysis of stakeholders' views. Stakeholders, we mean company staff, managers, employees in the involved industries, as well as adult educators. And these analyses were developed on data collected by three main tools at national level: interviews with employees, adult educators, and managers, a questionnaire, an online survey for employees, and a Delphi interview with managers. For this webinar, we are going to focus on the interviews with employees, adult educators, and managers, trying to give you some emerging results at national level and cross-national. The structure of the interview, based on the scientific background I was sharing before, is quite clear. 4 main topics for a total of more or less 10 questions. Which are the disruption that they see happening or happened in the recent past? And based on this disruption, what are the skills, current and future skills, they need in their company, as an individual, as a company? What are the factors supporting or inhibiting learning at work? And what are the training practices that companies introduce in their context in terms of methods, in terms of tools, and of course, what's the digital dimension of these training practices? As you may see, the sample include 63 people. It's quite homogeneous as a sample in terms of role of the people, gender, age. Sectors, as Essie was mentioning, include tourism, textile, bioeconomy above all, but also automotive, building sector. And all the countries involved in the project were, of course, involved: Switzerland, Finland, Italy, and Germany. The analysis was a qualitative content analysis for the interviews. We analyzed them at national level, and then all the results were shared to have a cross-national analysis. A system of coding based on unities of meaning was created, and through several meetings among the partners, we tried to coordinate both the unities of meaning to be used and also how to use them in order to have national approaches, but a cross-national system model. Results that I'm going to introduce you soon present the percentage frequency of the codes categories, or the marginal percentage frequency of the codes categories for each mode of the variable of interest for comparison. So in terms of sectors, in terms of nations, countries, in terms of roles. Now, straight to the results. In terms of disruptions perceived, digitalization, of course, is the most frequent. But it's interesting to see also these customers, suppliers' needs, which is something, by the way, we didn't include in the first version of our analysis, but was so clear from the first interviews that we decided to include it as a unity of meaning. What are the competencies? Looking at transversal competencies, collaboration and teamwork is clearly recognized by most of the people as relevant for the future, as well as life skills, but also active learning. People need to develop a kind of growth mindset to be able to cope with current and future disruption. As well as for digital competencies, of course, using digital equipment is the most frequent, and it's also because of COVID, something essential now. In terms of training approaches, it's quite interesting. Traditional learning and reflection on practice are the most frequent, which means that in terms of our project and probably in terms of your community at Eden, we need to develop something. We need to do something to make learning more innovative. And as you may see, digital technologies are mentioned, but mainly for communication or productivity. Most innovative technologies are not quite frequent, at least in our sample. In terms of factors supporting learning on the left, you may see that social interaction, connection, it's also mentioned connectivity, is very, very relevant as an organizational factor. At individual level, of course, learning strategy at work or motivation are crucial. In terms of factors inhibiting learning, workload is the most frequent, and it's mentioned very, very often, as well as the lack of social interaction. In a nutshell, just to summarize, in terms of challenges, what our sample outline, that digitalization is clearly a disruption, a source of disruption, but also the changes in the needs and habits of the customers is an important innovation, a source of disruption for their work. Maybe at national level, we can also give example on that. In terms of competencies, transversal skills, and we mentioned teamwork, life skills, active learning, are recognized as crucial. And it's interesting because it's quite in line with, for instance, the Future of Jobs 2020 report published a few months ago. Finally, a kind of old-fashioned approach in terms of awareness of employees and in terms of methods is emerging from the interview. So it's really a challenge for all of us to make more spread and to develop advanced solutions in concrete experience of the companies involved. In the slides, you can also find some essential references, and of course, the report will be soon ready. Now, if Francesca and Vlad agree, I would keep going with an overview on the Italian case. So main feedbacks emerging from interviews in Italy. Will be quite fast on that. Just important to mention that the Italian partner of the project is the Cometa Vet Center, which is a vocational training center providing courses in textile, carpentry, and tourism to more than 450 learners at EQF 3 and 4 levels, so high school. But we involved in this task also an associate partner, the International Academy of Tourism and Hospitality, providing EQF 5 level courses to more or less 200 learners, but which is very interesting because tourism companies in the Lake Como area, where both Yacht and Cometa are based, companies are directly involved in both the governance and the training provision. So, stakeholders involved in interviews, 15 interviews, 2 sectors involved: textile and tourism, managers, adult educators, and employees in as categories. More or less, well, not more or less, but in terms of average, they have a 20-year work experience behind, although we have very, very young people and also people with a lot of experience. Duration of the interviews was between 30 minutes and 1 hour, but in general was 45 minutes. It's interesting that the work was so interesting that we are still going on with the interviews because our partner, the International Academy, is very, very positive on that. So we are also doing other interviews. Main results in terms of perception of disruption. Again, confirming general results, digitalization, but also globalization, in particular in the textile sector. To give you an example, the use of social is changing the way people work. If you make a mistake in your hotel, maybe your name and the name of your hotel can be spread through TripAdvisor in few minutes. This is something changing the attitude of employees, just as an example, as well as customer needs and habits. People mentioned the dimension of sustainability, for instance, as well as, to give you another example, the introduction of vegan or vegetarian menus in the hotels and restaurants is not just an exception anymore. It's a concrete part of the activity of a restaurant or hotel now. In terms of skills, digital skills are considered not just a plus, it's the basic, what you need to enter the market, as well as in terms of transversal skills, to be multitasking, as well as analytical thinking are crucial. In the era of big data, they need people able to understand what the data say. Learning factors, supporting learning collaboration, not only internal among colleagues or with the supervisor, but also external with the suppliers or with the customers. They are sources of learning. Inhibiting learning factors, workload, but also the combination between learning opportunities, the timing of learning opportunities and the working time. Sometimes it's impossible to attend learning opportunities. Finally, workplace learning, how it happens. It's very interesting what emerged in Italy. Results are very differentiated. In terms of big companies, mainly tourists, there is a great investment in training opportunities, mainly digitally based. There are platforms with an international perspective where you select what you want to learn in collaboration with your supervisor or colleagues. And in order to improve yourself, reskilling, upskilling. When it comes to small and medium enterprises, it's a bit different. There is less effort in promoting formal learning opportunities, and usually they use traditional methods when they use them, or just coaching or learning on the job. You stay with your colleague, and you learn. So it's more related to personal initiative. And there is also an interesting gap between generations. The younger ones are more open-minded and invest a lot in learning, and they want to learn, while older generations, but not managers, rather employees, have a, let's say, a more fixed mindset, and they are guided by a more extrinsic motivation. I need to do that because it's my job. I need to keep my job. Thank you very much. This is what is emerging at general level and at Italian level. And of course, thanks to all the colleagues from the European partners and also from my organization and the YART. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paolo. And now, Kate, it's your turn to present insights from Finnish cases.
Yes, thank you so much. I will shortly share my screen here. So hello everyone, my name is Katja Maetoloa. I'm from Häme University of Applied Sciences, and thank you for this opportunity to present the emerging results of the Finnish context on behalf of our team. So Case Finland focused on a large-scale bioeconomy company, and we interviewed employees for qualitative data. The approximate was 30 minutes per interview. All interviews were conducted online due to COVID. And the interviews helped us to recognize the meaningful competencies and learning methods at work. We particularly looked at the changes in the industry and work, skills and learning processes, as well as future insights. So altogether, in our Finnish context, we had 13 interviews involving account managers, product managers, and supervisors. And in addition, we did mapping of the ideas with the management team of the same company, where management board members brought in their visions and considerations of the strategic skills. So in the phase 1, we had a short survey on competencies and learning resources and support. And on phase 2, we had a short ranking survey on the most important skills, practices, and resources. And this survey was based on the results in the phase 1. And in addition, we organized a workshop which focused on joint work towards the strategic development of skills and competencies. So just some key findings that we gathered from this work is, first of all, looking at the changes in the field, how the market and customers are changing, particularly in the bioeconomy sector. The number of primary producers is diminishing, and there is a trend of more large farms, and which also affects that farmers have more and more knowledge on different areas. The digitalization is present in IT overall in this field, but also in the data systems that employees are using in their everyday working life. Changes in the operating environment came through very clearly. The effects of globalization, increased competition, and somehow also insecurity in this sector. Changes in the field of commerce, e-commerce, and its effects on the work. Sustainability was something that we thought that would come through even stronger, but it seems from this data that we collected that it is not given, but it requires pioneering work, and it is also a very big image factor for this organization, for this company. And there were a lot of changes in the organization and in how the work is organized, obviously due to COVID, but also otherwise. There was growing trend of distance work, flexibility, faster working rhythm, need to be more effective with less resources, etc. And due to COVID pandemic, the live meetings and events with customers were not present at all. So there was less this kind of discussion possibilities or possibilities to generate ideas with the colleagues. So just to look at the side of the learning and competence development, first looking at the formal learning opportunities, there are these online platforms which are in use. But one of the things that was pointed out is that these platforms actually lack companies' own training materials. Individual learning preferences in relation to individual or collaborative learning and digital tools vary a lot. On one hand, the training online is very flexible to organize, and people can advance in training at their own pace. But on the other hand, at the moment, it lacks a social dimension and this kind of possibilities to concentrate on what you are learning. The current training is mostly lecture type of training, and only very few other interactive tools are used. And due to COVID pandemic, the number of trainings organized is actually a lot lower. Sometimes the use of difficult language can also create barriers to attend to training. And opportunities and encouragement to participate in education is often linked to qualifications that you can achieve through attending to training. And to look at shortly more informal learning by doing. This was perceived often to link with the new tasks and new responsibilities when you have to learn something, or searching, scanning information, as there is large number of products and a lot of information is online. This was also linked to the need to follow the development in the field, regulations or policy developments, or one's own reflection on the competencies and recognizing the new competencies needed at work. Collaborative and social and interactive learning activities also were present, especially in these interviews, and sharing experiences with colleagues or your own team seemed to be a very important point for learning. Obtaining performance feedback from a supervisor was recognized. Also other more informal feedback from colleagues or customers, and training opportunities provided by different stakeholders, such as retailers, customers, or other shareholders that employees work in contact with, and can provide this kind of specific expertise in certain areas. So these are shortly the emerging results from our Finnish context, and just want to say thank you. And I'll hand it over to Francesca, who will continue with the Swiss results.
Yes, I will. I will actually show a video from Alberto that unfortunately cannot participate today. Okay. So I turn off my audio.
Hi, nice to see you. I'm sorry not being able to be with you live today, but I'm happy to be anyway here in some way to present you the result of our research units on still learning. And when I say our research unit, I mainly refer also to the very big contribution Francesca Mendoni gave to this kind of analysis. Today, I will very briefly tell you about the results in the three main sections of our research project, dealing especially with what happened with our sample in Ticino. Ticino is the Italian-speaking region of Switzerland. In this region, we met three kinds of figures in three different professional domains, which is hospitality, building, and textile companies. When it comes to asking them to narrate their perception about disruptions given by technologies in their domain, we can generally say that at the first sight they speak about the same disruptions, but at the same time they put a different emphasis depending on the professional context. So if I think about the hospitality sector, one of the main disruptions refer to the past, and namely to the advent of booking online services. This created the need of new professional roles and competencies, and this is what is probably most important for us now and most interesting. An example is the profile of the so-called revenue management, which needs to be able to make data-driven decisions based on analytics provided by the booking platforms. In the hospitality sector, still, a future challenge is the higher and higher rate of automation that, especially in this profession, is related with the receptionist and the reception tasks. If we pass to the textile sector, we can report two main challenges they reported in our interviews. The first is the need to find ways to combine e-commerce services and physical shops, and we are ascribing this to the label Internet of Things. And the other one is different kind of challenges that we can group under the label sustainability. Finally, if we refer to the building sector, big B2B online services such as Alibaba are strongly shaping customers' and suppliers' expectations, both in terms of costs and service speeds. And this is what they perceive most as a technologically driven disruption. When it comes to skills and new profiles, we can briefly summarize two main points. The first is probably more common and familiar to some of us on how much more difficult it is to work on transversal skills than on technical skills. But what's probably more interesting to focus on now is the new profiles they focused on. In the textile sector, it seems that there is a need of a new figure able to correctly manage the communication between the headquarters and the physical shops. This new figure is something in the middle between the human resource manager and the digital marketing expert. And what's also interesting is that from the interviews emerged how difficult it is to find this kind of profile. When it comes to technology-enhanced learning practices, the common point was the pandemics and what happened during the lockdown. So, first of all, we found a common trait for all of them, which is the role of blended learning in the future. So they all agreed that blended learning is a form of further training that will stay in the future and will continue to be explored. On the other side, what we noticed was that some forms of non-formal learning, I'm thinking, for example, to a case who spoke about a singing course over the pandemic, online singing course. Okay, so in this case, some forms of non-formal learning could change the attitude towards technologies of these people. So people who were a bit resistant towards integrating technology for learning changed their opinion and their attitude on that. I hope in these few minutes I could be as clear as possible. Again, I apologize for not being with you today, but I'm sure that Francesca could answer all the questions you should have. Why?
Perfect. So I think that we can start our session of question and answer. The first question is for Paolo from Larisa. And the question say, thank you, Paolo, for your presentation. There is a big challenge when it comes to work with older generation and transforming their extrinsic motivation into an intrinsic motivation. Are you doing something in that field? And of course, if also the other presenters want to add something, they are free to do it. So I will start with Paolo.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. Muchas gracias, Larissa. Well, actually, I hope so that we are going to do something with our partners in this project, because I think this should be part of our goals. I have to say that in terms of reasons to explain that. What I've seen in the people we interviewed is that a lot of, let's say, the reason for that is often related to the company culture. As soon as managers or leaders at company level promote a different attitude, a growth mindset, a different culture of errors and mistakes, soon we see a different attitude in the employees. Of course, with older people could be more difficult, but I think that we should work on the leadership level in order to start changing this attitude towards the learning, this attitude towards reskilling and upskilling, and of course, in terms of also of the use of more innovative learning solutions. But I would leave also my colleagues to give ideas or answers.
Thank you, Paolo. Katja, Essi, would you like to jump in on this question, maybe?
Would you kindly repeat the question, please?
Yes, sure. So the question was about the big challenge comes about older generations and transforming their extrinsic motivation into an intrinsic motivation. And the question is, are you doing something in this field in relation to this project?
Yes, I could answer on behalf of our team. Actually, we are doing, as our organization is training organization. We are very interested in finding educational ways, training methods which motivate different kind of learners. And we are actually collaborating with one steel metal industry, steel metal company currently, where they have very skilled, very experienced welders. And the challenge is to transfer the know-how of these experienced experts to novice workers. And together we are developing methods where older workers are collaborating with newcomers, and they find it very motivating that they can share their experiences. Someone is very interested in their excellent working methods, the practices they have created, and it's of course very beneficial for the newcomers too. So pairing up more experienced older workers with newcomers with highly appreciating attitude seems to be quite nice way to work together. This is just one practical example.
Thank you, Essi. There is another question in the chat from Aurimas. What is the most important finding for the organization and implementation of e-learning, in your opinion? I don't know if Katja wants to start answering.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again, please?
Yes. What is the most important finding important for organization and for the implementation of e-learning in the organization?
I think that from the interviews, and maybe Essi can add after me also, but from these interviews and data that we collected, it just highlights the importance of informal learning and highlights the importance of different kind of ways to learn very flexibly in your work, and also maybe highlights the importance of recognizing that learning, that sometimes we might learn while we're working, but we don't really recognize that we are learning. If we recognize those moments, then maybe we can enhance their importance for whole of our work community. So because it seemed, for example, with this bioeconomy company, that they are organizing some formal trainings, but it seemed that they were less effective compared to the informal learning, as we discovered through this data. Essi, would you like to add something?
Katja, I think that was a very good point. And I would like to add another issue. In our case study, we also found that both employers and employees, their attitude towards digital learning or digitally enhanced learning was quite positive. But in practice, they didn't apply or implement innovative digital tools. So one could say that the field is ready for digital innovations or to apply more digital technologies in learning. We just need to find out the ways and find out the ways how to scale and disseminate these good methods we educators may know. But the attitude was positive.
Aurim has asked if you have some examples on how to support informal learning through digital technologies, or if something emerged. Maybe I can say something about the Swiss context. In the textile company that we interviewed, the general manager told us that he was very interested in promoting informal learning strategies at work. And the company is developing a project on the use of mobile learning. And he was inspired by the TikTok application. I don't know if you have in mind, it's an application that now is very used among younger generation. And they are using this mobile learning app to support learning in the physical shops. So to transfer knowledge from the headquarters to the physical shops. And they involve some young people that is able to create this kind of content that are very short, very easy to transmit. This is only an example of a good practice that we retrieved concerning a way to support informal learning strategies at work. I don't know if the others want to add some other examples or considerations.
Maybe one short comment to add, as we mentioned with the results, that there is often in informal learning, there is this learning from your colleague or getting more new information from different shareholders and learning through that. But often how it happens is that you learn something from your colleague, that it becomes more your own quiet, private knowledge. But I think that the digital tools implied in this kind of working environment could also create more shared platforms where this knowledge would then be shared with other co-workers and become more shared knowledge instead of individual knowledge and competence.
Maybe Francesca, if may I just go back to the original question about e-learning, because in the Italian context it was quite interesting to see that e-learning is considered both either a success, a big success, or a failure. And it depends on how it is developed. So your example on the app, the mobile app and the informal learning made me think that when e-learning is just a different setting, an online setting for traditional frontal training, it's considered a failure, is not interesting, it's just something more to do for employees. On the other hand, it was amazing to listen to interviewees from some hotel chains describing the great opportunities of learning from the platform developed by the international chain, which was Marriott, by the way, where they have the opportunity to meet people from all over the world, to watch and watch again some modules, to be in touch and work together with other people, and to brief an international dimension of development, challenges related to their sector.
Thank you, Paolo. We have still 5 minutes, so there is another question for Essi. Larissa asked about the MOOC, the MOOC project, the collaborative MOOC. So if you tell Larissa some more information about the collaborative MOOCs, the project will develop.
Yes, during this project, the MOOC will be quite compact experiment, so it's not totally open for everybody, but it's open for the target group, which is going to both test and evaluate, and also evaluate its pedagogical usability. And this, why it is CMOOC, what does this tiny C letter mean here? Collaborative MOOC. It means that it's facilitated by teachers or tutors. So when you are an attendant in the MOOC, you are not doing it, you are not completing it totally individually, but you are receiving guidance and support from tutors and teachers, and you will work in a collaborative way within your small group, study group. But we are eager to test this CMOOC together with our industry partners, and we are eager to share there the good pedagogical practices, how to strengthen informal learning at work. So it's going to be a tiny pedagogical experiment, and if we get good results from this experiment, we will consider the further implications.
Thank you, Essi. The CMOOC sounds really interesting. Will you be publishing the outcomes at a later date? Ask in the chat.
Excuse me, was it about publishing the results?
Yeah,
or?
yes, publishing the results, yes, of the CMOOC project.
Yeah, the results of CMOOC project will be published in next autumn term, I think in August or September 22. Yes.
Perfect.
I think it could be important now that we have a question also to mention that we have a LinkedIn group where if you are, anybody is interested in following the development of the project, you may find there ideas and outputs that we are developing and going publishing step by step. Still learning.
Thank you, Paolo. There is a last question. We have 2 minutes still. Does the MOOC consider interdisciplinary work within the teams?
Oh yes, thank you for this question. This is essential part of CMOOC, that we will create interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary study groups so that the industries can even learn from each other, and people from different companies and from different educational institutions can learn from each other. And this is also the way how they, as competence developers, can use informal learning resources as their learning catalysts, but they also get lots of ideas how to support their colleagues, their employees, to find more learning resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Essi, so much. So the time for our webinar is finished. Thank you so much for participating. I'm sending now in the chat a questionnaire for assessing this webinar, for providing us feedback for the next webinars, suggestions to improve it. And I wish to thank all the presenters and Vlad for supporting me in the co-hosting of this webinar. So you should know that we organize webinars the first Wednesday of each month. So we will announce soon the next webinar of the Eden Up series. Thank you so much for participating and see you soon.
Bye.